All right. The in-game syndicate themed LOL show continues to roll on this week. We got Ship My Money. You guys know him as Adam on Twitter as well. Going to be a fun show catching up. It's been a while since we've had him on. If you guys got questions, topics, drop them in the chat. Otherwise, let's get to it. This is LOLs with Pete Bric and guest Ship My Money.
Does he think? I think he thinks this. He thinks this is a go. Vegas Dave thinks this is a go.
Hot naked girls doing yoga.
What?
Why don't you just win like a man?
Random.org. Type in 1 for yes, 2 for no. And let the DFS gods pick for you.
And I'm absolutely begging you not to dupe us. Please don't dupe us.
Brian, I realize I messed up the intro. I need to now introduce you as a professional Madden streamer, Bric75, right? You popped your streaming cherry the other day?
That's right. Yeah. That's why we bought Run the Sims. We're going full Madden. That's why Adam's here. Do you play Madden, Adam, at all ever? Did you used to or anything?
Not really. So whenever I play, I was more just like the franchise mode GM type stuff. I never really got into playing online. I'm not particularly good at it at all. But I always enjoyed like the front office type stuff more anyway. So right. Yeah, like all the sports games, I never really got into playing online.
So Brian, I haven't circled back. I clicked the link like when you tweeted it out and Davis shared it, and I was like, all right, let me go check this out. And I just saw a screen and I heard nothing. I saw no action. It must have been you waiting for people to trickle in to start. So I have no details on how it went, but how did your first streaming experience go?
Not bad. So my setup is as basic and simple as you can get. So I got the capture card, but I don't have 2 monitors. So I'm playing on our little StreamYard screen right here. This little tiny screen that you can see the 3 of us on. So it's about 12-inch screen. And I can't put myself on. I do briefly because then I can't see. Because my big fat head's in the way. So that's why you didn't see me on there most of the time.
When you're doing like all of your DFS stuff, you don't have multiple monitors?
No. I have in the past. But no, I have like the, what is this, 24 inches or something? It's just a bigger one.
Okay. How many, like Adam, should we monitor shame him? How many monitors do you have going?
Yeah, I have 2.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody.
I have had 2. Yes.
Less than 2.
Well, this is, I mean, I will say, are you pretty much permanently at the lake house now? Do you live there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I sold my place in the city.
Is this breaking news? I feel like I didn't catch up to this in a long time.
Nah, I told you. We just forgot, I think. It was like a year ago, maybe.
The violence in the streets of Chicago is just getting too bad for you.
It's just I wasn't staying there enough. Was one point. And yeah, there was like especially after COVID, like there's not like a lot of the shops shut down and stuff. All my buddies moved out, got married. The city's just not as fun when you get, past 40.
Yeah. Do you live like downtown Baltimore? You don't have to dox yourself, or are you kind of more in the burbs?
Yeah, no, I'm in the city.
Okay, so you still got you can walk to bars, walk to restaurants. You still live that life?
Yeah. When I first moved here, I lived like right on a square with like a million bars and everything, and then I moved like 2 blocks away. So at least now I can't just walk downstairs and get in trouble. I have to at least I have to at least make the decision to like walk a couple of blocks.
2 is good. 2's a good number. 2, you don't want to be directly on there either, because nights when you actually do want to sleep, you just hear bros drunk, fighting and shit out your window all the time.
Yeah, especially before COVID, when all the bars were open until 2, and then after COVID, a lot of them just started shutting down at like midnight because they realized that all they were losing out on was fights. But yeah,
probably because they didn't have enough employees either. That's been a big problem with those restaurants.
Does it just become like white noise to you at some point? I've heard that from people in like New York, where it's just like, I'm just so used to hearing the noise now that it doesn't even register as a thing.
Yeah, pretty much. And like the apartment that I had right on the square, my bedroom was like in the back of the apartment, so it was at least relatively quiet. When I first moved in, like before I had my bed delivered and everything, I just had a mattress in the living room where my TV was, and like that was a nightmare. Like I just couldn't go to bed before 3 a.m. But once I like got the bedroom and everything set up, I didn't really notice it too much.
See, and now I'm on the like flip side of it, like being out in the suburbs is pretty quiet by me. And now if I go anywhere and I don't have like a white noise machine and I hear even like the smallest noise, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, no, it's gotten so spoiled by silence.
That's the same way I am. I think a lot of guys are more like that. I have a whole evolutionary theory on that. Like, there has to be some sort of guy who was like on the night shift or the scout or whatever, like everyone had their role in the tribe. And so like, man, if I hear like somebody, turn the water on downstairs to brush their teeth or something, boom, I'm awake.
Yeah. The people who can sleep through like crazy noises like that always amazed me. So yeah, we're just going to talk about our sleep habits and kind of our favorite, white noise machines. Now,
I got one more Baltimore thing.
Yeah, do it.
Baltimore sucks. Okay, you can move on. No, I'm kidding. Is there I think in like the early 1900s, Baltimore had like this aspect where all the stairs were made of marble. I've never been to Baltimore. Do you know about this?
I don't. I know that there's a lot of places with like old wooden stairs from like before the 1900s.
Okay.
But yeah.
And I'm not necessarily a young person, but young people don't know anything about anything. So
wow, Brian.
Sure. Baltimore had something about like marble stairs. It was like a big like point of pride of the city back in 1920s, 30s, 40s, or something like that. And they would go out and polish them every day, the residents.
Come on, Adam, have some pride for the streets.
Or I just completely made that up. I gotta Google it.
Like row homes had like, so maybe I don't know if they were marble or not. I know that it used to be that like the row homes all had stairs like at the door that I don't think necessarily exist anymore.
Yeah, no, I'm right.
I was
presence of high quality white marble in Cockeysville, a town 17 miles north of Baltimore, is where you guys got your marble. So
is that what would finally get you to do a vacation, Brian? You turn down the Vegas trips, you turn down the Florida stuff, but you're like, I might head to Baltimore to check out this fine ass marble.
I could just go to the south side of Chicago and get the same thing as Baltimore.
What is your favorite thing about Baltimore, Adam? Like if you had to be head of the tourism board for Baltimore, what would you do?
Is it the marble stairs?
It's definitely the marble stairs that I just was reminded existed at some point. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm bad as far as actually doing touristy things, like, or just exploring it all. Like, I'm one of those people that like I moved here, I found my spots that I like, and then I rarely like leave those spots. I mean, for me, it's like obviously being close in proximity to the O's and Ravens for sports, and then just the amount of like bars and stuff. But like, even that, I'm not like I like going out. I like going to bars, but like I don't necessarily like the super crowded like New York style stuff. So like I think people that really like that would be bored in Baltimore. There's not a lot of like high end entertainment. So yeah, I don't know. Pretty like I like it, but I'm also bad at selling it for sure.
Yeah.
Are you a dive bar guy or step? I'm assuming a step above dive bars.
So I like both. I definitely spend more time at dive bars. Like when I moved to my new apartment, it's basically, like I said, it was like a couple blocks from where I used to live, which was like, more dive bars, live music type stuff. And then it's a couple blocks from like the really high end neighborhood where like Ravens players lives and like the, nicer hotels and stuff are. And I figured I'd spend like a lot of time there now that I was closer, but I still just like gravitate back to the dive bars mostly.
Do you go and do you watch games? Like, when you get done with your DFS stuff, will you go, do you like watching sports at bars or do you like watching at home?
I prefer at bars. I don't watch that much at home. And then like during the summer, I'll go to a decent amount of O's games once I finish with baseball.
Yeah. All right, breaking news. Brian has shared the image of marble stairs in the chat. He could feel our skepticism. He could feel the chat skeptic. He's like, no one believes me. If I don't pull this up, I will be the laughing stock. Here we go. All right, these are the stairs, Brian. These are what you wanted Adam to know about?
Beautiful marble stairs.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. I thought you meant like on the interior of buildings. I was like, I have no idea.
This is how Brian remembers America.
Yes,
this is what he wants us to return.
Exactly.
The women cleaning the marble stairs with their children.
Yes, we're going back, Pete. We're going back.
Look at that.
Get those stairs shine, Adam.
Why are all the photos of them having to clean the marble stairs.
It was
like
a point of pride in your city.
Okay.
Something we used to have, Pete.
Yes, here it is. It says no other city in the country, perhaps the world, has the universal white marble steps as Baltimore has, and noted their dazzling white color. Thank you for this history lesson today, Brian.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, I figured Mr. Baltimore over here would know a little more, but
I live outside of Boston, and it's just like, to your point, Adam, I mean, I did the Freedom Trail like when I first moved here, once. But then, if people are visiting, you're like, oh, you got to do the Freedom Trail. It's like, I've done it once and I've lived here for 15 years. Like, you don't end up actually doing the tourist things. I've never been on a duck boat tour. And that's like everyone's favorite thing to do when they're visiting Boston.
Yeah, like I've never been to any of the museums here. I've never been to like the symphony or any of the stuff that we have like kind of north of downtown. Like I've been to the bars near where I live, and I've been to sports games.
I've been to the bars near where I live. That used to be a one stair commute, and now it's a 2-block commute.
Yep.
There you go. Yes, the chat says make marble great again. Neil said he did enjoy watching you save some use the other day. What do you think you're going to set up a streaming schedule, Brian? Like, is this going to become a regular content thing for you?
Probably not a schedule. Davis is joining me after this show. We're gonna rip some Madden packs.
What a crazy thing to say. Davis and I are gonna do a show where we're ripping some Madden packs. Life comes at you fast. I think you should change your motto though, Brian, because your whole thing is about saving the use. I think your new motto should be converting the use to DFS sickos who subscribe to the in-game syndicate. Like, that's your marketing funnel. You bring them in for Madden, and then you're like, can I interest you in some public-facing Sims youths?
Huh. Yeah, see, my bet is they, like, after they lose, they, like, look at themselves in the mirror and, like, I'm going to start a business. They just never play a video game again. But, I guess DFS is also a form of self-employment, at least.
That's right. I mean, how much this would be a good place to start for DFS. Where on the now I'm blanking on his name. Oh yeah, Chess is okay spectrum of 0 to 80 hours spent on DFS a week. Where are you at these days?
For me or for Brian?
For you.
Sorry, for you. I don't care about Brian.
Yeah. I mean, depends on the season. For NBA, it's a lot. Like, my hourly is definitely horrible for NBA, especially because I still prioritize playing like large field stuff as opposed to smaller. But yeah, I mean, doing NBA minutes projections and all that stuff, like it's a lot of time. Baseball, it's like none. But for basketball specifically, and football, like I don't do a lot of my own work for football either. So basketball, it's closer to the chess end of the spectrum and the Petty end.
Wow.
Like I heard Petty a little bit talking about his process for NBA, and mine is really similar, I think. Outside of I don't watch as much basketball as he does, but yeah, pretty similar to those guys for basketball. For everything else, it's if I'm not doing content or talking to subs or whatever, I could get all my stuff done in like less than an hour a day.
Gotcha. So it is the content angle that kind of balloons the amount of time and work you're putting in.
Yeah, for everything other than basketball. For basketball, it's just kind of an all-day thing, regardless.
And so when you say like you're acknowledging that your ROI or, specifically your hourly isn't great on it, is it because you do just love it and like you just can't imagine life without occupying your time with that? Or is there like an element of, no, I'm going to hit this big GPP and then my ROI will be deserving of it?
It's both. Like I do enjoy the process for NBA, and I think I actually can add value to myself, like just doing my own stuff. It's still marginal. Like it's probably not worth the time, but especially again, when you're talking about higher variance stuff, like the chances of me finding some guy that's going to play 2.5 minutes more than the industry thinks, and then that guy actually doing well in those 2.5 minutes, and then the rest of my team actually doing well around him and me winning something is still like so low. I'm from a time standpoint better off just, finding ways to aggregate or whatever, but I enjoy the process for NBA. I think I follow it enough and I know it enough that I can do it. Whereas for like NFL, I don't follow enough. Like it would be a major process for me to like really do granular stuff for NFL like I can for NBA. So it's a combination of I enjoy it. And I think it does make me better.
I've seen like some conversation. I've been playing some more hoops on Underdog and doing the daily drafts, and so I've been paying attention to conversations and stuff about projections. And it definitely seems like one topic that comes up, and I guess this is evergreen for any sport, is just like the projection models often being slow to react to like a really new trend that's a small sample size. Like, do you feel in doing stuff your own that you're able to kind of put like your thumb on the model more and be quicker to react to stuff like that maybe a bigger front facing model wouldn't be able to kind of take that risk, so to speak?
Yeah, it's one thing I like about doing my own stuff for NBA is I can be more aggressive on, if I think Denver's just playing 8-man rotations now, I can just stop doing the like obligatory give 8 minutes to Hunter Tyson thing and just give him garbage time or 0 or whatever. So stuff like that I think is useful. Yeah, so like there's that, and then just paying attention to the rotations and stuff, like being able to jump on things a little bit quicker. I think because one, it's just paying attention, but also the more people that you have relying on your projections, the less you should probably be willing to take those types of risks.
Yeah.
Like you can argue it either way, I guess, but I think you have to be more confident that you're right, as opposed to if I'm mostly just doing it for myself, being able to say like I don't really care if I'm right. Like I don't care how often I'm right. I think I'm going to be right often enough that it's going to make me more money.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that dynamic too, Brian, because it is like it's the site's responsibility to, and if they have a huge subscriber base, to be as accurate as possible on every single player in projection. Whereas like your goal as a DFS player and your path to winning a tournament might be being super aggressive in a way that you're willing to embrace that volatility, but you wouldn't necessarily want to collect a bunch of sub money and be like, you guys all should embrace this along with me.
Yeah. I never thought of that really. I was thinking, what you could do is you could provide just two options, right. Like one projection set and then like this risk taking set. I was thinking it was more beneficial because when you do stuff for yourself, a lot of times you can cut corners and just like do a sloppy job because it's you. It's just for you, like if you're coding or any endeavor really.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do this, Pete. But then when you're like, oh, there's people relying on me, you'll spend some more time, you'll make it look a little prettier. Maybe you'll do some extra things too. So I was thinking much more that it's just beneficial from that standpoint. But I kind of like the idea of 2 projection sets. I don't think anyone's doing that.
What would be the second one? Because I guess the thing it gets hard with, and this is the same for like even conditional projection sets. It's like there's like an infinite amount, like on an NBA slate with how many Q tags. It's like, well, a conditional set with this one guy in, yeah, that's helpful. But then how are you playing the other 8 Q tags? It's like an infinite amount of sets you would need for those scenarios.
Well, there's the infinite amount of sets, or you could just do this is Adam's he's gambling on these set tonight. So like maybe there's one Q he's pretty sure is not going to play, so he adjusts that team. The other Qs he just leaves as whatever. And then he's got some guy who's 4 minutes. He's like, no, I think this guy can there's a slim chance he's going to get this, so I'm just going to bump him up. And that's it. That's what you get. You could have that package, or, you could use those, or you can use the standard ones.
Yeah, I'll say like in a perfect world, you just have like each team, available where it's like, well, if this guy's in or this guy's out, and your sub can just choose how they want to do it. That obviously is a pain in the ass also. But yeah, there's that way. And like the way I've been doing it for, my small subscriber base is what you were basically saying. Like if there's somebody that I'm pretty confident is out, then I'll just project them out. And, obviously that's easy for people to see that they're projected out. And if you don't want to do it that way, then kind of sucks, but oh well. Where I think it's the opposite anyway, where there's a lot of cases where, the main sites project everybody in, which I think is the way to handle it if you're going to just do everything in a vacuum, especially, with late swap. But at the same time, you can be pretty confident somebody's out and then have no way of adjusting for that either.
Yeah. And that is the thing too, because then it's funny where I've seen conversations where, the sites will, like you said, mostly just leave every Q tag projected in. And then everyone's like, well, we all know there's no way Damian Lillard's playing it. I just take him out. But it's like, then all of a sudden you go down that rabbit hole where you're essentially editorializing on the Q tags through your projections, which is another thing that you might be comfortable doing yourself.
Right.
But that's a hard thing to be like, we're going to take stands in these Q tags, I mean, you could speak to it like you're probably going to be wrong a lot and then upset your subs. You're like, you didn't even have this guy in the player pool and he dropped 60 tonight.
Right. And it's also a matter of like the less risky way. Like you project Damian Lillard in, then he gets ruled out and you're able to late swap. You can still get to, whoever's starting in his place, etc. If you project him out, all of your subs are just jamming like Ryan Rollins, who then Dame gets ruled in and they have 3K. They can't even swap because they jammed this 3K guy and he's going to play like 12 minutes or whatever. And they're just all losing every entry.
Yeah.
If you got like 1,200 subs or something, you got, let's say there's 30% chance you think Lillard's not going to play, Pete. Do you go, okay, we're going to just project, we're going to take a gamble. We're going to project Lillard out this night. And you have 1,000 of those 1,200 pissed at you.
Right. Yeah. And that is the thing too. If you think about how people interact, say with, and I've mainly been interacting it through like rankings, right? For the draft games themselves. And a lot of people, NBA is so much of like you guys are kind of describing, like a teach you how to fish thing. Like here's all the info, make the decisions you want and apply it. But there are so many people who just want to plug in a lineup and sweat it, run the optimizer. They just want to import the ranks and auto draft off the same things. But man, as I learned so quickly, there is so much context and nuance and decision trees with these NBA things that it's like almost impossible to have like a one size fits all ranking, especially for the way these drafts work. Like it's not like DFS where you can go swap out, salary cap or whatever. Like you said, once you get the news, like you do this draft and like the draft is done outside of a swap.
Yeah. And you're there all night with that type of stuff, Pete, too, right? Like you can't, Underdog's interesting in that if a guy gets, I believe if a guy gets ruled out, you just get the next highest on your list. Right. So that's a whole another layer that NBA might be better on best ball. Like if you don't want to spend so much time and you just want to use that like little pieces as your game theory piece, there could be some interesting stuff to do on best ball. But like for regular DFS, man, you can't really be away from your computer or phone or laptop or whatever. Even if you go to the bar, Adam, I'm sure you're bringing your laptop or something or maybe you go to the bar underneath your building or something.
Yeah, I mean I don't really go out during NBA season. In general, but yeah, when I first moved here and I lived, like right above a bar that was open until 2 or whatever. Sometimes I'd go down there, but normally even then it was just like I'd get done basketball at 10 and then be like, all right, now I'm gonna go grab a beer and then go to bed. But yeah, like you're just at your computer.
Are there any trends like in doing your own projections? I assume you like look around the industry, see what other people are projecting stuff for. Like, what are the themes or the trends where you notice yourself deviating the most from the other sites?
Mostly on what we were talking about before, just like being more aggressive in looking at rotations, like especially with specific teams, because what ends up happening, like teams like the Knicks, teams like the Nuggets, depending on who's out, if you don't just like assign 5 minutes or 6 minutes to a couple of bench guys, you end up getting in a situation where you're projecting like an uncomfortable amount of minutes to the starters. And sites typically, I think, are hesitant to do that. So they kind of project deeper rotations than some teams typically run. So there's a change, there's just a difference there. And then kind of on the flip side of it, and this is a more recent change that I made, I tend to come in lower than other places, or at least some other places, in general on my minutes projections, just because, and my philosophy used to be projecting, I guess, kind of closer to not necessarily minute ceilings, but like how many minutes do I think guys play if like the game goes according to plan. And then the more that I've kind of dug into it and like just looked at numbers and run stuff on like how many minutes guys are actually playing, I've kind of realized that projecting a lot lower in a lot of cases than actually seems like logical or comfortable on players makes sense. So I probably come in a little bit lower on just like minutes in general for main players.
Yeah. Do you have you done any of the underdog drafts, or are you strictly salary cap?
Strictly salary cap. I did some of the underdog stuff, like I guess this time last year, and it was one of those things where I was like, I'm pretty sure that I can get an edge here, and then I didn't
Yeah.
win in the first, like, I don't know, 7 days, and just was like, screw this. But part of it too is like what Brian was saying, where I do think there's an edge if you spend the time like creating a good strategy for handling Q tags and stuff. Like I personally, and maybe it's just because it's what I'm used to, like I would rather just know that I'm spending the extra several hours at my computer playing salary cap than like spend the brain power trying to think through like which Q tags I think are really going to play or not play and how to adjust for that on like underdog. And it's probably something that if I just like did it for a couple of weeks and got used to it, I'd enjoy it. But it's just like the thought of sitting down and being like, okay, there's 8 Q tags today. Let me figure out exactly how I need to rank these guys and what contingency plans and all of that. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. I'd rather just late swap later.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's tricky too because like a lot of the contests open up the night before, so a lot of people who kind of are on top of stuff will get in there early, trying to get, because people are naturally scared of the Q tag, so you can get better deals. And then as it's getting more and more likely that they're going to play, then their ADP inches up, and then maybe you're able to access combos that other people didn't like. While at the same time, you might nail one thing and then fall on a landmine in another place, and it blows up that entire lineup.
Right. And it's the whole, like, people obviously with salary cap too debate late swap and not late swap. And obviously there's pros and cons to both. And I didn't mind the no late swap as much as I thought I would when DraftKings briefly got rid of it. It was nice just kind of being done and whatever happens, happens. But like, it's the same thing in my head. It's just like, I don't want to spend my day trying to figure out how exactly I want to project questionable guys, to play or not play. I'd rather just know that I'm going to spend 2 extra hours or 3 extra hours being around my computer.
Yeah. There isn't. I mean, then there are the elements too, where if you wait until right before the contest is going to fill, almost where you kind of barbell it, and you have the max amount of information, then you could have a potentially pretty big edge on all of the people earlier who were stepping on the landmines.
Yeah. When I was doing the underdog stuff, I was basically doing all of my drafts between like 5 and 6. So like you had a decent amount of information, and then you still had enough time to get them done.
Yeah. Just the problem is you got to do your DFS stuff during that time too. It's tricky. That, I mean, if it seems to me that doing that, that's another reason to do the underdog ones is a lot of the DFS guys they're not going to do it.
Right.
It's just too involved, too much time, and the time to do it, they're busiest. So that it seems to be that just waiting to the last minute. I don't know anymore, but probably the first couple of years was just auto profit. Like EV.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, the games have gotten, so this was the first year that I know of an actual ranking set that people are able to upload, through the ETR sub. Before even, like, you basically had to go use their FanDuel projections, create your own rankings out of it, requires a little CSV work. So that barrier of entry, I think, whereas now anyone who wants to pay for a sub can have near real-time updated ranks and just upload them. I think that is like raise the floor of like the player pool to a pretty big degree.
How many entries do they have in there? Like 8,000? Yeah. What is it tonight?
Like tonight's a big one because they got the 15K to first, 28,000 entries in the $5 flagship.
20,000. And how many do you think max or come close to maxing? Like over 100?
Yeah, I would guess. There's probably like 100.
Okay.
Maxers would be just
that's not
back
nothing.
Of the napkin.
That's a lot for
maybe that's a little
spending that much time. Although those drafts go faster. But yeah.
And here's the thing though, those I would say, like, even if I'm a little high, like 80% of maxers are probably auto drafting.
Right.
Yeah. So especially for NBA, since you don't have to worry nearly as much about correlation. Like,
right.
It was basically taking me an hour. I don't remember if I was maxing, but I was definitely coming close if I wasn't. And it was basically taking me an hour to basically run a sim that would update my rankings, upload those rankings, auto draft, do it again, like for each draft. And then I would pretty much max or close to it in an hour.
Do you enjoy like the Q tag element of the NBA, even like separating this from the underdog conversation? Like, is that putting this moving pieces puzzle together? Is that fun? Or like in a perfect world, would you have like super standardized early reporting and not have to like deal with this shit?
It's both. Like, I hate it, but I think also if it went away, I would kind of miss it. Like, cause it is fun. It adds, puzzle pieces and all of that. But at the same time, it makes it so like so much of the middle of my day when I'm just trying to get projections done and everything is just looking at teams and going like, okay, cool, I'm gonna have to redo all of this work probably within like the last hour of the day. So I would like them to go away just from like the time component. Like it would take so much less time to play NBA if you just told me at 11 a.m. who's not playing.
Yeah.
But from like, and you're still doing kind of the same puzzle work because when guys get ruled out, you're still trying to figure out exactly who's benefiting, who's getting the minutes and all of that. You're just able to do it with more time. So yeah, I mean, I guess I would like it, but also there's the argument of, guys getting ruled out after lock and then late swapping, still I think is an advantage, even though it's a smaller one than it used to be. So I guess I wouldn't want to lose that necessarily.
If you could press a button and it gets rid of late swap, would you press that button?
In the current form of NBA, no.
You're voting to keep late swap.
Yeah, I've always been a late swap person. I didn't like when DraftKings got rid of it. I thought that I would probably just stop playing. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would, but I still definitely prefer it being there.
I mean, you should, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like if you're gonna be spending this much time on the and you want that edge, you should want late swap. It's just super, super annoying.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I would rather my teams be dead at 7:30 because my highest owned guy rolls his ankle 2 minutes in than be dead at 7:30 because somebody playing at 10 o'clock gets ruled out that I may or may not have even known was questionable. Yeah, it's just you put so much work into it. I'd rather at least like when I lose it be because of variance outside of like, is the guy going to play today?
Yeah. Go ahead, Pete.
Well, kind of with Brian's question, how many people like in a pool, or I guess in like the player pool, do you think are actually sitting at their computer and staying on top of this stuff like throughout the night?
A lot now. I think it's very clearly gotten like the edge is still there, but it's a lot smaller than it used to be. And I think a lot of that is just, stochastic ETR having, or I don't know about ETR, stochastic saber sim, maybe ETR, I'm not sure, having just easy ways to late swap now, even whether or not they're like great doesn't even matter. It's just that it's easy enough. And so it's even kind of changed my strategy when dealing with Q tags, like leaning a lot more into just assuming Q tags are going to play until they don't, because it used to be, well, if I guess right on this 10 o'clock guy and Kawhi is out, then I have these Clippers at 5% owned. Whereas now it's like, okay, I gamble, I guess Kawhi is out, and then they're still 20% owned, 25% owned because most of the field's late swapping. And if he's in, then I'm just screwed because I passed up all these early plays thinking he was going to be out and he's not. So it's kind of changed my strategy there. And I think the field, like there is still an edge. Like the other night with Bol, he was like, I don't know, 15% owned when he was announced starting. When, in the past he would have been like 3 or 5 or something. And he probably should have been like 25, 30. So like there is still an edge, but it's definitely a lot smaller.
Yeah. I without knowing what's going on behind the scenes, I'm skeptical of the late swap products right now. Just that's my opinion, although I haven't been playing NBA this year much. I don't know what your take on it is. I think there's also a problem with late swap, like we were talking about with projections, where part of like late swap is the guy in front of you, Pete, most likely has this combo, and you just can't play it because you're behind. So you got to switch off.
Yeah.
Well, if you switch off the nuts, your user you switch him off the nuts for 100K, that's going to look really fucking bad. And in my experience, like the dupe rate was way higher than it probably should have been. Like they would swap because like if they were calculating the EV to reasonable dupe amount, they would be like, you're going to dupe with like 10 people here with this one. Let's just go somewhere else, even though it's a better, points projection wise or something like that was my experience. It's really hard to do. Maybe it's a little risky to piss off your customers. It's really hard to do properly. I don't know what they're doing in the back end, but that was kind of my impression on that. Like Adam, I don't know what you think.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a perfect way that exists for sure. Like my personal way is kind of just like piecemealing a few different things together from different sites to do what I want. And generally I've been happy with it. Like the majority of my lineups when I late swap, more, outside of like for huge news, but just late swapping in general, don't change too much because they kind of suck anyway. And I'm better off just playing the lineups that are going to hopefully sneak into min cash. And then my lineups at the top, generally, if they started off really well, they get higher projection. If they didn't, they don't. And like the blocking thing too, in large field, I don't pay as much attention to it because there's just so many lineups ahead of you typically. I think I probably get close enough by just being, like if this lineup has a piece that's doing bad, get more contrarian, vice versa. If I have a team that like, going into the 10 o'clock games, I can see is close to the top and is clearly blocked somewhere, then like I'll specifically pay attention to that one. But like I think that's a bigger issue in your smaller field stuff, but then it's going to be easier to manually just double check stuff too, to make sure that like the actual lineup ahead of you is being accounted for and like you're not blocking yourself out.
Yeah.
Have you what was I gonna ask here? But as I think of this, Min Cash Merchant says this dupe talk is fun, but I need to hear Ship talk about how he pissed away his first 100,000 because my bankroll management is not great. Is that part of Ship My Money lore? Punting off
my
your
first 100. What about my second or third or fourth? Yeah, I mean nothing specific. I just have horrible bankroll management and have never appreciated how much variance there is in DFS. I absolutely have the like self-confidence and everything that I think you need to withstand, to handle downswings and to just know that you're always going to bounce back. But I've never picked up the part of like, no matter how good I think I am, I'm still going to lose a good amount and have downswings. So yeah, there's nothing super specific about other than like my first 100K. I think I won 100K like the week after I quit law school. And I think I lost 30K the next month solely playing like 1K live final winner take all live final qualifiers.
Oh, smart.
Yeah, which obviously was bad. Other than that, I've just blown it in, I think, normal ways where I just don't have good bankroll management and I move up in stakes, run bad, and it's just like, shit, where'd that money go?
There was a live final. I think we covered it or we had one of the guys on the show or something, and he had like, I totally can't remember the details, but he had like 5 entries, and he got like 70K back or something. And it's like, it cannot be worth it. It cannot possibly be because the payout structures still aren't great in the live finals.
No.
They're still not even like poker good, and poker is GPPs are so swingy themselves. Did you play poker before? DFS?
Yeah, not so. I was just starting to, I think, get decent at it when Black Friday hit. Like I had just started like committing to actually getting better, and same kind of thing. Like I was playing tournaments, so instead of taking the route where like you have less swings and make the most money, I was playing the most volatile stuff where you make less money, just like I do with DFS. So never, game selection, bankroll management, never been my thing, but played some.
I wonder if they could make the skill gap wider in cash game DFS best ball somehow. Maybe in best ball it would be wider, but the skill gap in cash game poker is huge. I mean, like you have to know how to play, and especially I imagine the games now are just like almost unbeatable online. But DFS, that skill gap closed pretty fast. Like 5 or 6 or 7 years, I don't know, where the cash games, because I mean when dudes aren't blowing, 80-90% of their rolls because it's just variance, like they might not even be that bad. That people get disillusioned, they stop playing. But with cash games, that is more like sports betting, and even cash games are still way more swingy than sports betting or poker.
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, I was kind of thinking about it the other day. Like, I kind of use sports betting, like prop betting and everything, as cash games now, where it's just like it kind of just backfills the money I'm losing at tournaments until I win a tournament, hopefully.
Yeah. Do you, like, because you're playing, I assume, almost all of these NBA slates, do you have like a general range that you're putting in play, or is it just kind of like modulating based on how you're feeling, if you're winning, if you're losing? Is it just all over the place?
Yeah, kind of. I kind of had cut back. I haven't 150 maxed in a while because I kind of noticed that like I was winning with 50 lineups or whatever pretty close to as often as I was winning with 150. And so it was just like, why am I taking on more risk? So yeah, it's more like when things are going well, I do start moving into some smaller field stuff. Like next time I win a large field tournament, I think I'll probably pretty drastically change what I play to where I am playing more of the high stakes, smaller field stuff. Because I think I can beat it. It's just obviously swingy in its own right. But yeah, like that's my goal basically next time I win something big, is to just kind of reallocate what I'm playing to where I have less, plus 100K nights and a lot less minus, mid 5 figures months.
Yeah.
Yeah, smart. Oh, I lost my train of thought. I was going to comment on some mean people just keep losing our trains of thought.
I know.
It's like you have an effect on us.
We got a question here from our friend Neil in the chat. Has Adam always done his own NBA projections, or did you just start doing them this year for in-game?
Sort of. In the past, when I had time, would at least do my own minutes and try and adjust stuff. But usually I didn't really have time. Like when I was doing, doing shows every day, like when I was at Stochastic and stuff, like I just usually would end up using other projections just because I didn't have time to do what I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, and I assume like anything you do like that, where you're getting your hands dirty, getting underneath the hood, like it'd be, even if like you weren't the best at creating projections, you probably have to learn so much. Like it has to be a net positive, just kind of understanding how that stuff works. You probably understand the fragility of projections better. Like I bet it's made you a better player.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. And in general, it's just like forcing yourself to learn skill sets that apply to other things too, which I think is obviously really good. But yeah, it's just, understanding that kind of stuff to where like it's second nature to talk about now. And, like sometimes if I'm doing content or I'm talking to subs, it'll get frustrating where it's like, why don't they understand, like, like you said, the fragility of this or whatever. And it's just like, you didn't understand this either 3 years ago. Like, stuff like that, where now it's just a second nature the more you spend time actually like digging into stuff and paying attention to it.
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say was doing less than 150 entries. We haven't talked about it in a while, but we've talked about it a bunch before. It makes sense to me that if you can cut off at some point, let's say you're analyzing 100,000 lineups. We all would, I think most people would agree, most of the best players agree, that you can cut off thousands of those lines. Like these lines are just garbage. So if there is a demarque, for sure, I think you could even do that within your 150 set. I'm not sure how accurate people can get, but they're probably putting, at this point, as the game gets tougher and the margins get smaller, there's probably 20, 30 lineups in your 150 that you could probably get rid of. And, maybe some guys are so good or the edge is so big that, no, they should always be putting in 150. I'm sure that's the case for a lot of guys. But I don't think it's the end of the world to go down to 75 and 50 and just try to work out a process where you're cutting off. And in your post-contest sims, you're looking and going, oh, I only did 5% negative ROI lineups in that set, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. And like that's the thing is like you're still not going to be super accurate in knowing, what lineup lineup 51 is versus lineup 50 or whatever.
Right.
But it was really, for me, it was just paying attention to like I was winning, I'd play 150, I'd win 100K, and it was just like so often a lineup in the top 50 of like my lineups, and it was just like, okay, like why am I taking on $1,500 extra risk every single slate when I can just play a third of that? I'm still, pretty good at least knowing what my best lineups are, even if I'm not going to be great at picking, lineup 55 from 45.
And isn't there an element too, like thinking about that? And I've thought about this a few times when I'm doing like the NBA drafts, that if I am, say, taking a stand that's maybe on, a player that I think is going to be not on a ton of teams, like I'm already a little off the board. It's like, I don't need 150 versions of this like kind of fringe bet I'm making. Like if it hits, I probably am going to only need, 5 to 10 lineups to like realize that hit, essentially, of like, there's probably massive diminishing returns the more off the board you go of like adding more and more entries around that piece or whatever.
Yeah. The diminishing returns for sure. And then it does, I think, affect in some ways the way that I would want to play strategy wise, to your point. And it's something that I kind of go back and forth with, because like I have a process that naturally does a good job of diversifying, and that applies to whether I'm playing like, 20, 50, 150 lineups. But then I think about it sometimes like, okay, if I'm playing 20 lineups, I probably should be more willing to just be all in on somebody. And if I lose $300 or whatever, as opposed to when I'm playing, 2250, and should probably be more balanced there, because there's not 150 good lineups I can make with this one guy probably anyway. So I think that, and that's something that, I think probably deserves like some sort of consideration as far as like your risk management versus how many lineups you're playing.
Yeah, for sure. For like, that makes a ton of sense to me. So like on nights where there's like a bunch of games and you're really spread out, there's no like obvious chalk piece, 150 makes a lot more sense on those nights from a risk standpoint, not an EV standpoint, but a risk standpoint. Yeah. And then those nights where, whatever players ruled out, backup point guards getting 40 minutes guaranteed, and you're going to have 100% of them, and maybe 90% of another guy, and maybe even 3 guys are going to be in almost all your lineups. Well, you're probably going to live or die by a few combos. And you just want, that's another thing you could do is just, if you can get enough decent, unique combos within those chalky pieces,
right,
then maybe you don't have to go the full 150 to get an edge.
Who are Adam? Who are some of the guys crushing it right now in NBA DFS? Are there any new players on the streets, or any familiar faces now that Petty, I believe, is semi-retired? Someone said they saw him in a contest last night.
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen new names. Like, I think Shady's still playing really well. VP seems like he's having a good year. Yeah, I don't think, and maybe I could be wrong, I don't think I've seen any names where I'm just like, oh, I haven't seen that before. Like, who are they?
Is Raging Phillips still up there?
Yeah, him and Mazwa.
And who's the time traveler? Why can't I think of the time traveler? Oxenduck.
Yeah,
is he playing still?
He's still playing. Obviously I'm just thinking like flagship. I don't know that I've seen him like win anything recently, but obviously that doesn't mean
maybe his time machine broke.
Right. Yeah.
Well, then why would he play? I want to talk about this question MWell50 has up here, Pete, if you want to highlight.
Yeah, let me scroll back. Which one is it? Say it.
Do you think you can be profitable as a single entry player in salary cap DFS?
Oh, there we go.
Or is MMEing the way to be long-term profitable? I think that's a fun topic. So single entry, I think you could definitely be profitable in single entry. I think honestly, it's something some people should consider if they're trying to like get into DFS and they don't have a MME process already, like a real good one or someone they can latch onto somehow. Single entry makes a lot of sense. The problem with single entry is how many can you get into that are decent each night? Each single entry is very different. So like if you're playing like a, 10,000 person single entry for $2 or something, that's a very different tournament than $100 50-man single entry. And they all have different dynamics, but the fact that they do have all these different dynamics is good for you, because a lot of the MME guys, they just mass enter everything. They're not really thinking about the specific single entry that you might be in. And you could go in there and you can make these late swap adjustments based on what you think your opponent has. It can eventually become very obvious that, it's 12,000. He's got to have Giannis. Like, okay, so what do I do if he has Giannis? And you can make all those granular decisions. So it's just a lot of effort, but you can do it. We talk about this in football, I think, Pete, with Leone and stuff in the Thunderdome. Adam, looks like you might have some thoughts too.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. As far as like the first part, can you be profitable? I think so. And one thing that actually stood out to me, and we've talked plenty of times, both of us, about the flaws in post-contest sims, but like when I do play smaller field stuff, single entry stuff, 3max, my ROI, my sim ROI is often pretty comparable to in large field, which is one thing that has made me think that I probably should be allocating more time to small field stuff if I'm going to beat it at a similar rate and just have less variance. But like the problem is, I think you can definitely be profitable at it. The problem is there's only so many single entry contests you can play before you're playing small field against nothing but pros. And
right,
so it's like, well, am I gonna play? Okay, I'll play. Single entries $20 and below. Like, great, you got $65 of action today for all of the work that you put in, and you're gonna make $6 or whatever. So that's kind of the problem, is finding enough volume without getting into games that you no longer can beat.
Right, which is another reason that it's good for someone starting out. So
Right.
yeah, if you're starting out, your bankroll's not huge. A lot of the pros aren't even bothering. So, and you could go multiple sites, although the sites are dwindling now. You could go multiple sites and get your single entries in. It's still, man, it's tough. Like if you're doing all the like 50-cent dollar stuff with thousands and thousands in single entry, you're basically playing GPPs. So like I think a single entry as more smaller field, maybe 1,000 max, 2,000 max. Yeah. That's football. So in basketball, it'll be way lower than that. So, I like that idea for people just starting out.
The other thing
isn't there an element? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to do is like the median expectation. Like when you play large field, like you're expecting to lose, pretty much every night, but your median loss is going to be like 50% of your entry fees. Your median when you're playing single entry stuff is going to be 100%.
Right. And that's what I was saying. Like what I was going to say is the feedback loop on it too. And just the amount of sample sizes where it's like, you get a lot more feedback if you're MMEing, like what's my ability to make good lineups, where on like one lineup a night, or even if you're getting 3 or 4 different ones into single entries, like that's so small too, to like, even know, like, am I actually making good lineups, which is harder, I think, than even if you're doing like 20 or 150 cents.
The portfolio puzzle is probably really like, I don't know who could solve that one, but like trying to balance your risk in a bunch of single entry lineups and different sized fields would be like a super tough puzzle to solve. But I imagine it kind of takes care of itself in that if you're in a bunch of like, let's say 10 to 100 mans, and you're really doing like the BP type of granular, you're paying attention all day type of stuff, petty. There's BP in chat, by the way. What was I going to say? Oh, like when you make changes in certain fields, like let's say you make a change in the 10 man and you make a change in the 20 man, but you leave the 100 man. Well, now you're kind of diversifying anyways. So like it'll force you to diversify a bit and bring down your risk even more, especially compared to GPPs.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was playing a lot more single entry 3 max stuff across like different buy-in ranges during NFL, and it was still something that like in general, if I was going to have the same kind of plays sim out as good regardless of field size. It was more a matter of like who they're being paired with, but like if it was a week that I thought Caleb Williams was going underowned, he was still just going to end up getting jammed into like so many different contests where I still felt like I needed to find a better way to balance out like what I'm playing so that I don't just have 80% of my total entries in like one quarterback.
Yeah. So what is the groups again? Is it Maswa, Raging Phillip, Cheddar Bisque, and who's the other one? Who's Cheddar playing with?
Kobe for MVP.
Kobe for MVP. That's right. I mean, I know they're partners, but it seems to me like Raging Phillip's always winning year after year to me. So maybe they.
Are you saying all of the best players right now are, or not all of them, but a good chunk of them are partnered with someone in some capacity?
That's what everyone says. I mean, I have no evidence or proof. I don't think they deny it. Someone correct me if I'm wrong in chat. By the way, this is for entertainment purposes only. Don't sue us. Don't dupe us.
Well, what I mean, the actual T's and C's on that, right? For going back to it's like you're allowed to share research and stuff like that, but you can't build a lineup set in conjunction with someone Jaden Tanner style and split it into 300 entries essentially. Yeah, that's where you're breaking it. But that becomes a very, very fuzzy area and how you would actually apply.
Yeah, I'm guessing they're sharing research, they're sharing sims, like sim code, they're sharing bankrolls maybe. And who knows? Maybe it's like 25%. I have no idea. Maybe now they don't even work together. Maybe they've made so much money they just go, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. It'd be interesting. I mean, I would imagine they must be like related to share of a deal that long. Like it's been years. They've been, but And maybe it's just rumors. Who the hell knows? I mean, I know.
I don't know that I've really seen Kobe even playing that much this year, which again could be completely wrong, but I've definitely seen Cheddar up there constantly.
Adam, if you could hand choose a partner, they said, all right, buddy, you can't be a lone wolf in DFS. Everyone's got to go swimming with a buddy now. Who would you want to be your partner in the trenches, sharing your DFS secrets together? Who would it be?
I mean, for NBA, can I just grab Phillip and steal him from Maswa?
I think so. Yeah. There you go.
I think I'd go that route.
Okay.
Otherwise, I don't know, convince Petty to unretire.
See, we need, speaking of Petty, he's normally in here trying to say, where's the new drama? Imagine if you like broke up a longtime DFS marriage.
Right.
And then you like that would be spicy. Like, who's the new guy, in here? There you go.
Yeah, you could polish his marble stairs for him.
That's a great euphemism, Brian. You're gonna start doing that there. Let's see. Have they been going longer than Bric and Pete? Because we're coming up, Brian, on our 4-year anniversary?
4 or 5, and we've made way more money than Phillip and Maswa too. So that's like not even the same ballpark. This show generates so much cash.
So it was March 11th, 2020 was the Rudy Gobert night, which was the first episode of LOL. So we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary. And
wow, that's crazy. A month and 10 days almost.
Wow. Brian, what are you going to get me for our 5 years?
Oh, God. Marble polish, Madden lesson.
I'm looking it up, and year 5, the gift is in fact marble. No, I believe it's wood. It's wood gifts.
I'm not giving you wood.
Okay, Brian, you better give me some nice wood on our 5-year.
I might polish your marble, but I'm not giving you any wood, buddy. All right, let's not.
All right, yeah. Brian's like, 5 years more polishing marble. 10 years. 10 years is when we'll get to it. What year did you start playing DFS, Adam?
Started playing, I guess, 2014. Started playing seriously like late 2015, early 2016 is when I quit law school.
Okay. Does that blow your mind that you're coming up here or just past like a decade of playing DFS?
Yeah, it pisses me off because I feel like I've wasted so much time, like from the standpoint of like we were talking about before, just never solidifying bankroll management or anything. Like I should have so much more money than I do, be playing so much. Like, yeah, just should have like handled so many things differently. But yeah, it's crazy that it's been this long.
Is this your first? Because I believe like when you left Stochastic, you started kind of doing your own thing. You had like a paid service, and now you're doing obviously part of in-game. Is this your first time kind of like building something for yourself that there's, equity for future income streams just outside of playing DFS or, exchanging time for money with the site?
Yeah, which I'm excited about. That's kind of, I say that I feel like I've wasted time, like from a DFS standpoint I have, but I also feel like just, obviously it's led to where I'm at now as far as like business stuff goes, which I think is good. So yeah, it's my first time doing any of that.
They're saying in chat, you're right, Kobe for MVP is no longer playing. JP Morgan Chase is now, he owns half of JP Morgan Chase. He's won so much in DFS.
Dude, how am I going to be able to beat JP Morgan at DFS? They have an entire trading floor handling.
Amy Diamond has an endless bankroll. There's like no way.
Oh my goodness here. Yes, let's see. There was another question up here before. Some of them are trolled. Neil wants to know if you've ever played good lineups. Nerdy Tenor was weighing in on the single entry thing. I think single entry should be more plus EV if the contests are decently large, simply because the percentage of sharp opponents is lower.
Yeah. If you play under the $5 or whatever the thing is, the demarque, and then play single entry, it's going to be mostly people who aren't pros.
Oh, I had a question for you, Adam. When you were talking about kind of how the late swap products have improved and that a lot of people are using them, is there like leveling then going on where you're like, I know which projections they're using, I know what the site is telling everyone to swap to because Kawhi isn't in, and then you're saying like, even though that's technically the best play from like a GPP tournament perspective, I have to go like a ring lower so I'm not with the herd?
Sort of. It's not like necessarily thinking or doing it intentionally that way, but I do I do, use updated ownership projections and fields and all of that. So there are times where like I'll end up, especially if like when there's situations where I do actually project somebody out and then end up being right. A lot of times I end up actually swapping to less of that player because like when I run everything initially, I'm using low ownership projections on them. And then when you get to that game, ownership projections are up to like 30%. And it's just like, okay, well now I know how my lineups are doing and I'm swapping to less of this guy because he's 30% owned. Then I end up with like 15% or whatever. So yeah, like there's definitely spots where just because I'm updating things and how I think the field's going to play, I end up actually not swapping to as much of guys as I guess like I would.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that, like even with like the underdog dynamic, right? Because if like people just re-upload their ETR ranks and saying like what's going to be the default swap that anyone doing that they're going to get, and yes, I'm probably going to have to sacrifice some projected points or projected minutes to not have the exact same swap as everybody else. The other thing I was going to ask you too, when you were talking about making your own projections and like learning how to do stuff, like how much are you relying on ChatGPT or AI stuff these days?
A lot. Yeah, I mean it's kind of funny because like I know that ChatGPT is giving you mostly like shitty information as far as efficiency goes, but it still just closes that gap so much between what I actually know how to do versus being able to do something that kind of works. Like when I first built, before SaberSim released all of their sims, I had built my own that weren't or aren't as good as SaberSim, but they were good enough at the time. And it was like they ran slow. Like it was taking multiple minutes for me to run my stuff, but I at least built something that functioned and did what I was telling it to do. Whereas without ChatGPT, like I couldn't have even begun to do that. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff where I do that, but then like it still shows up where I was trying to do something in Excel the other day, and it gave me some really like convoluted way of doing it. And I texted my sister and asked her something. She's like, "Why are you doing it that way? Just like do this." And it was just like a one step, like did exactly what I needed done. So it's still like nerdy can just do stuff so much better than ChatGPT can imagine like telling you to do, but it still just like bridges that gap from zero to at least something functional.
I feel the same way. I had that moment with an Excel sheet I was working on, and I was like talking to ChatGPT, and I was like getting so mad. I'm like, you are just overly complicating it. And I was like, I know the brute force way I was going to do it myself is now actually going to take me less time than just fucking arguing with you about it. I'm like, you're being so stubborn. I know there's an easier way to do this.
Yeah.
It pisses me off, man. The names I've called, if those ever get leaked, I'm canceled. I'm telling you.
You're canceled.
You think Madden chat is bad? I hate when it forgets. Like we just talked about this. Yeah. Scroll up and read, you dumb motherfucker.
It pisses me off so much it'll give me code. I'll try and use it. It won't work. I'll give it the error and say it didn't work. And it'll be like, well, this didn't work because you did X, Y, Z. I'm like, I didn't do anything. Like I copied what you told me to do. Like, this is 100% your fault.
Yeah. It's going to get much better very quickly for that type of stuff but it's still not going to be able to solve. Like it doesn't know the ideas on ways to really. So I think building those initial sims, 5 years ago or something like that, that was plus EV, kind of like making your own projections was 8 years ago. Like just no one was doing it. And so like, even if like Adam has, whatever, Giannis at 32 minutes played in it, but it's really 35. Back then, that does not matter at all, and maybe that 2 minutes doesn't matter now as much either, but no, everyone else, they were just like literally on the shitter going like, I don't know, Jordan, like they weren't even trying. So like just guessing using Basketball Monster was just like plus EV, that back then. And Sims, I think, is the same way, where making those sort of, even before ChatGPT, but if you had some coding skills, you could do a simple sim, was better than no sim at all. But now I think you do have to step it up and have some more complicated game theory ideas in your sims to beat the current state of the game. And ChatGPT doesn't know that shit yet. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, well, you know what would be really good here? If you do this, no one's thinking of this. That's not how ChatGPT works. It's scraped roto grinders from 10 years ago, and then it goes, DFS is a game of skill and gambling.
Yeah. It's like you have to be able to come up with like individual ideas, and then it can help you implement them. But like if you just tell it, build me a sim or whatever, it's not going to do half the shit that you want it to do. If you can say, simulate the game 1,000 times and bucket, into these buckets and whatever, and then like step 2, draw from those buckets. Like it can kind of give you stuff that works. But
There's a question: is using a lineup optimizer negative EV in a sim dominated ecosystem?
No. I don't think so. Adam, looks like you agree with me. So like there's still, like you do, I think still, who knows what he's doing right this second, but it's probably still using a lineup optimizer. If you are good if you're like Petty or whatever, and you can figure out who is playing and what's wrong, what the rotations are, and how it all impacts DFS point scoring systems, you could easily still use an optimizer. And when you're going to have to do some tricks, like you're going to really have to know how an optimizer works, right? And like the like boosting and uniques and teammate issues and stuff like that, because a sim will tell you that stuff. A good sim will tell you that stuff more easily. Like you're not going to want to play this bro with this bro because you just never get to the ceiling in any of our simulations. And so it just does it for you automatically, where you're gonna have to massage it or bully it, as Pete says, an optimizer. But you could definitely, BP might even use FC. BP, answer that, BP. Are you still using FC or optimizer?
He says he's been trying to use FC.
Yeah, he's off the grid again. Oh, wow. That's news to me. Did you guys know that?
I kind of knew, just because someone had asked the other day, like what the next best optimizer to use was.
Do you guys think FC is going to be sold or closed down?
I don't know.
Like, I mean, just guess. Like, make a line.
Well, I thought he was on the lam last time. So
is that real? Entertainment purposes only. Pete is speculating here. Go ahead, Pete.
I have no clue. I just remember on the show we went and like the site was completely down. Like the servers were not even being paid for. Or whatever.
Probably do that right now. Let's see.
Well, it goes back to, so on the optimizer thing, right? A lot of the things that a sim is doing, right, is like it's handling all of those correlation elements. It's processing all these variables that like your brain can't handle itself. But someone who's really smart and really good at bowling an optimizer, grouping things out, putting boosts, negative and positive for certain scenarios, they're essentially like hand building a sim via an optimizer anyways, right? Like it's kind of trying to get at the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say to that question. Like, it's not inherently minus EV to use an optimizer if you're good at using the optimizer. Like, before I even really knew what sims were, I was using FC like a sim. Like, I was using randomness to do the best I could to mirror standard deviations. I was setting rules so that I wasn't getting negatively correlated players together, and then was building lineups and everything. So basically, all the sim is doing versus what I was doing with Fantasy Cruncher is saving me a lot of time setting groups and showing me things that maybe I didn't know were plus EV or that were like good ideas from like a correlation standpoint. But if you're using an optimizer, you can use an optimizer very similarly to a sim if you know how to use it and do the work.
Yeah. The way I think of it, DFS in generally, is like if you could kind of picture every single combination, every lineup in the event you're playing in your head, right? Like there's just all the lineups. How do you grade those? How are you going to grade them? Right? Like you don't have to like know anything. There's just all the various combinations. They're just a bunch of names. And then how do you grade those things? And Optimizer was like the first attempt to quickly get to the ones that you want out of that pool. The vast majority of those combinations are completely worthless. Right. So like you can lop off a huge chunk of those already. And it would take you have to have like nerdy levels of coding to even populate those quickly enough to play DFS. But really, you're just trying to grade a bunch of different lineups, and you could do it a bunch of different ways. And the most popular way right now, I think, amongst pros is simming. but you could definitely do it with an optimizer or some algorithm where you just rank them, or a bunch of other various ways to quickly grade a bunch of names.
Right. And I think you're probably seeing to some extent too, and the error I think is smaller, since Sims basically, like, Sim ROI is giving you a grade, whereas on your lineup and how it'll do, whereas an optimizer, when people first started using optimizers, they're just playing like the highest projected lineups and not considering ownership at all. So like the error that you're making with Sims is still going to be smaller than when you were just plugging in the highest projected lineups. But I think people are still making an error, or still probably making errors, where they're leaning too heavily maybe on Sim ROI and not accounting for, it's just telling you the Sim ROI based on a bunch of assumptions that you made for the field and for the players and everything. And you probably either should be using a lot more fields than you're using, or trying to account for the errors in your assumptions in some way, or using metrics other than simply Sim ROI. Like, I think people are probably still over relying on what they view now as like gospel in, well, this lineup has 150% ROI, but like, you're still just going to be playing better lineups doing that than saying optimize and entering that.
Well, not to mention the even the simple issue of the best lineup from an ROI perspective, like a bunch of people who subscribe to that site are going to get served up that same number and then use it. Which, if you told the sim 8 stochastic subs, 8 Saber Sim subs are going to use this, all of a sudden that ROI gets blown to pieces.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, or like just like their field is wrong. Their guess is bad, especially in a smaller field. It'll just compound that error even more.
Yeah.
Like with like they rank by ROI in the Sims, and like Adam was saying, they rank by points in an optimizer. And again, if you just list out all the lineups, you could probably just circle a section of lineups, metaphorically in your head, of looking at all these lineups in the right area, and then randomly select 150 from the right area of those lineups, and you're going to have like a pretty good shot of it. And like, it's probably not even, especially in baseball, a bad idea, just skipping the top ones, because that's the ones everyone's going to play in an optimizer.
Yeah.
And so like, you could do that a bunch of different ways, like ownership maxes or stuff like that. Go ahead.
And that's where you get into the portfolio management part, which I think is probably one of the bigger advantages that you have right now, is like, if you just really step back and simplify what you're trying to do, whether you're using an optimizer, sim, whatever, you're trying to find lineups that are in the right part of the graph in terms of points, correlation, ownership. And then within the lineups you could choose, you're trying to play the lineups that compete with each other the least across your set of lineups, and from that group.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's not going to give you an edge, though. Portfolio management is just going to lower your risk.
Well, right, yeah,
which is still huge. I think maybe in some ways, there's some instances it can bump your EV up too. But
yeah, so, I mean, I was thinking too, like, in a perfect world, and I think you've talked about it, where if lineup A that you're playing does poorly, it's likely that lineup B is actually doing better than like its median. Like, if you can find a way to make your lineups kind of work together in that way.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like what's the example? I always use Pete, like a handcuff or something in best ball, where like you're heavy on Saquon or something.
Both sides of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you pivot to, like, if there was if Gainwell was like an obvious workhorse, if he goes down with a season-long injury.
Yeah. The example I always think of, because it comes up a lot in basketball, like, let's say for the Wizards, when like Joval was out before he got traded, they're going to play 48 minutes at center. So you have a cheap Rashawn Holmes, you have a cheap Vucevic backing him up. On average, Holmes is playing 28 minutes, Vucevic is playing 20. Holmes is a good play. But as soon as Holmes starts losing minutes for foul trouble or blowout, like, Vucevic is a really good play. One of those two guys is a really good play, like, 90% of the time, basically. So if you were only playing 2 lineups, you probably either want 2 Holmes lineups or one of each.
Yeah.
Well, and isn't there even the same thing, like in the same way, I've heard people say like they'll often have a really good cash week if they have a bad tournament week, right? Because they're like all of their core cash plays, they're not going to be playing that heavily like in their tournaments, because they're taking bigger stands or whatever, like where you could almost diversify that way. This maybe even goes back to the single entry in smaller field contests, right? Where you're playing players that make more sense for those smaller fields than you are in your large field, and you're getting portfolio management like across different types of contests.
Yeah, that's hard too, man. That I think like to actually code that out really hard.
Yeah.
Because we've talked with Shady with this offline and stuff, and he's mentioned how like his stuff will break when he tries to add in extra elements like that. A pitcher, baseball pitcher, and then the opposing stack against that pitcher is a good one. Cause like you can picture this in your head where the pitcher's a great play that day. Like his salary's too low. The pitcher's a great play that day. And also the stack could be a good play because no one's using it for some like way under using the stacks when it should be, let's say 5% owned, but it's only 1 because everyone's on that pitcher, for example. Yeah. Well, they both are plus EV and they're both super negatively correlated. So it's not a no lose situation, but you want to put yourself in as many no lose situations as you can. Yeah. In all these sports, it's harder in basketball, probably in some other sports, PGA. But yeah, for sure, that's a part. I just don't think those cases. Just being nitpicky here, I'm not sure how much EV edge a lot of that gives you, like specific EV edge.
Right.
But definitely lowering your risk and putting yourself in a no lose situation is way plus EV on your mental health, and your life.
Yeah.
That was actually something I hadn't even thought about it with baseball, but I played a little bit more smaller field stuff last year. And that was something when I was like working on my process, when it started happening, I was like, oh, good. Like, I think this is working right. Like, I like this, that I think this pitcher's a really good play. I have him in 2 of my 3 lineups. And then without me forcing it, it's just naturally telling me my 3rd lineup should be the team facing him.
It's great when it also like just works that way naturally. It's just it's such a good feeling.
And I think that's often hard for people who are, say, new to DFS or beginners, because they also want the clean sweat, right? Like it blows their mind of like, wait, I'm rooting for them in this one, but I'm rooting against them in this. Like some people are, but like if you are thinking of it from, like Brian was saying, like a risk of ruin standpoint and how to smooth out your variance or be right in one spot, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Well, the guys who just want the winners probably aren't watching this show, Pete, and not a ton of, everyone wants winners, but
our views have picked up as we've gone on. So, talking about ChatGPT and grading lineups is apparently bringing all the boys to the yard here.
We're not getting any help from Twitter with promotion, so we need.
Yeah, what did you say? You had a bugaboo with Twitter of late?
It's just annoying, like that we tweet out our shows or whatever, and it's clearly getting dampened in the algorithm somehow because no one can see it. The views are down, the likes are down, and you're not even putting links in your show. All right, I'm not putting links in any of my stuff, and it's still super low.
Yeah,
well, like that's what Twitter's for, like a big part of it.
I've noticed. I'm sure, Adam, you've had this as someone who will do more like what I did my like cash game bit week, and I'm just like volume tweeting. Like there's a snowball effect of like all of a sudden it's like, man, you're like I would get comments from people of like, I haven't seen you in my algorithm for a year. Like literally saying that, because otherwise, like I barely tweet just like promotional stuff. Like there is this thing, and I know the TikTok algorithm works, like they want you feeding that shit constantly with content, where I do really think it's also just like the more you post, the more they're going to serve you up.
Yeah, I don't know, because I tweet a decent amount of just random bullshit, and like I'm noticing the same thing as Brian, where my stuff's just it's not like, oh, I thought this was a good tweet and nobody liked it or nobody thought I was funny. It's like nobody even saw this, like pretty consistently, even if I don't have links or whatever. It's just like, it's been really bad lately.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, which is completely, the one thing that some of those other sites do well. And I was just like Holka was just talking about this with Davis on, I think the Take Cast or whatever. But like there is like on TikTok, you could have an account with like 50 followers, and if you have like a really good piece of content, like it can just explode. Like you can get 500,000 views on TikTok, even with a small account. And it just feels like on Twitter these days, like there's just not, even with a big account, like it's hard to hit like a moonshot. It does still feel way more like volume rewarded in that regard.
Yeah. You have to just tweet about Terry Rozier and then get him investigated for betting a year and a half later.
Yeah, or defend the Dallas Mavericks in the Luka trade, like you were.
Yeah, yep,
That'll get you.
That worked well.
That'll get you some views.
My barber asked me yesterday about the Terry Rozier thing. He's just like, I don't know if maybe he had like messaged me about it and I didn't realize it was him or something. But he was just like, he brings up Terry Rozier. He's like, yeah, like you had that tweet, like blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, cool. My barber's seeing tweets like me just shit posting on Twitter from a year and a half ago.
Who?
His
My
barber.
barber. Like I got my hair.
Oh, your barber. I thought you said Marion Barber.
No.
Marion Barber fucking
that would be no problem.
Did you guys see the one I posted? I got like picked up in this like Philadelphia Eagles like big fan aggregator account that was looking. So I had like done
Jalen
this.
Hurts?
Yeah, it was like when he was hurt and they had a backup quarterback in. It was maybe like Tanner McKee or whatever did like a tush push, whatever, and I just did like Jalen Hurts' a system tush pusher as a joke. And this guy had like put together this collage, and it was like a big Instagram account. It had like 4,000 likes on it or whatever. And my post was part of like this hater collage on social media. It's like Jalen Hurts like kneeling down, being like, we're gonna defy all the haters and like win the Super Bowl. And it's just Jalen Hurts is a system tush pusher. And what the person who had aggregated it clearly had done was search system, like Jalen Hurts system was like the Google search they did, and like thought I was looking for like system quarterback, and like didn't even read the tweet to realize the absurdity of a criticism being a system tush pusher. But it made it on there.
Isn't that super annoying though when they use this all the time in politics and everything. They'll just completely take something out of context somebody says on Twitter. It's like they were joking or they did not mean that or whatever. Like it just happens so fucking frequently. It's so annoying.
Well, the Terry Rozier thing with that, for Greg really went viral. We were making fun of the people that think everything is rigged every time a player gets hurt or goes under. And then that ended up being used as people being like, oh, see, there's proof from a year and a half ago that people knew about this.
It did look like it.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It totally looked like it.
Well, it was because Brian and I pulled it up on real time. Like that story was like breaking, like as we were on Lulz. And even I, like the language, I was like, wait, what? Wait, did he? Like the way it was so worded, it was like it seemed too good to be true. How perfect it was. Yeah,
it was in the. I don't remember it. I don't remember for sure, but I think it was in the middle of like Greg had just been doing a bit for like a week or two of just going, acting like he had insider information on things, and then I threw out mine just to set him up basically, and it ended up working out perfectly a year and a half later.
So good.
Did Rozier get busted yet, or is it still just an investigation?
He's still.
They said they didn't find anything wrong. Like he's still fine.
Yeah, because wasn't the story like he was trying to impress some chick?
Yeah, and she like tweeted that he goes under whenever like they hook up or something.
Yeah.
Isn't that so funny? Like counterintuitive. I feel like if you're trying to impress someone, it's like take my overs tonight, baby. Like, I'm gonna all out. And you're like, hey, watch this. I'll fucking sandbag the shit out of this game.
Those TikTok numbers have to be real if Holka's getting actual conversions. So,
well, this is what I gotta say. Like, how do you know the TikTok numbers are real? Like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, what they're displaying is real. Like if you're going to an advertiser, they're gonna take those at face value. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what is a fake. Even if they are fake, what does that mean? Like within the game of social media, like the views are the views.
Yeah. Do I need to open a TikTok account now that I'm a Madden pro?
You got to post clips from your Madden. You do. You need it. Adam, thank you for joining us today on Lulz. Obviously, people can check you out in the in-game syndicate Discord. You got your own channel in there, and you've been posting pretty much daily, right? Your own NBA projections for the slate.
Yeah, I post my NBA projections in there whenever I do them, which is pretty much every single day.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just looking at that before. Going to take a look at those whenever I play some underdog NBA stuff. Brian, what else do you guys got going on at in-game right now?
We're still working on the back end. I mean, I should say Dan is doing the actual real work, but we're trying to get a product going here, hopefully in a month or so. Edit to run the Sims, and then we're going to work on the football changes as we go.
Awesome.
No NBA, and maybe MLB projections from you.
That'd be fun. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out in the chat. If you guys are new, subscribe. We do lulls every Thursday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Either Brian and I shooting the shit, bringing on guests from the world of DFS. We also get this up on an audio feed. If you can't catch us live, make sure you guys check out the End Game Syndicate. Highly recommend getting in the Discord. Some fun stuff. All those guys have their own channels in there. You can ask questions, tee them up for conversations, for their roundtable conversations as well. All of that good stuff. We will see you guys next time on Lulz. Peace.